Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Riley McManus. Thunder Bay police are investigating a sudden death in the Balmoral Street area. The 30-year-old Thunder Bay man was located by police when they responded to a call for assistance at around 1:30 yesterday afternoon. Police have yet to declare whether they suspect foul play, but they are continuing to hold the scene. And both the Major Crimes Unit and the Forensic Investigations Unit are involved in the probe into what happened. A post-mortem is scheduled to take place on Thursday in Toronto to try to confirm the cause of death. If the death turns out to be a homicide, this will be the third murder in Thunder Bay this month. Anyone with any information is urged to contact City Police or Crime Stoppers. The Thunder Bay Police Services Board held its first meeting today under new Administrator Malcolm Mercer. He was appointed in April by the Ontario Civilian Police Commission to oversee the board through the numerous human rights complaints. Celios Bellos reports.
The new Police Board Administrator Malcolm Mercer will hold the role for at least 6 months, as he plans to attend all meetings in person. Mercer's role, according to the OCPC, will be to restore proper governance, ensure Thunder Bay's Police Board is providing sufficient oversight of policing services, and to restore confidence in local policing. After the 6-month period, which could be extended, Mercer will then provide a report with his findings.
It seems to me there has been a lot of controversy and stress in the community. My principal goal is to try to help the board move forward on matters that are important to the community.
3 members of the Police Board, Chair Kristen Oliver, and provincial appointees Michael Power and Royden Pelletier resigned after the appointment of Mercer. New board member Shelby Chung is currently on leave from her civic duties as she runs in the provincial election. Mayor Bill Morrow remains on the board and explains his thoughts on the first meeting with the new administrator.
No, it was all fine, pretty smooth, an ability to share information from my perspective, obviously representing the police service and the police board.
During the meeting Tuesday morning, Mercer, as the lone voting member right now, approved around $64,000 for the outside expert panel's work this July, which includes community engagement and travel to Thunder Bay. There were some concerns about the cost, considering how the police board's significant legal fees are impacting the budget, though Mercer believes in the panel's work.
It costs money, and so the issue today was to hear the estimate, which was a sort of what's described as an upset limit or a maximum possible amount, and that appears to me to be necessary money well spent.
The work that we're doing through these 2 reports has a financial cost to it that's being borne by the taxpayer, and I wanted to ensure as best I was able that the administrator was aware of that. We had a couple examples of that today.
There are currently still 2 openings on the police board, as the provincial seats haven't been filled yet, and there could be 1 more vacancy if Chung wins her election bid. At this point, it is unclear when the positions will be filled, with the next board meeting set for June 21st. Celios Bellos, TBT News.
The province police watchdog has terminated an investigation involving Thunder Bay Police and a 30-year-old woman. The probe began on March 14th when the Special Investigations Unit was contacted by the woman's lawyer, claiming her client was seriously injured while being arrested several months earlier. The SIU has now determined that the woman did not suffer serious injuries and the file has been closed. A major fire broke out in the municipality of the Nevin last night, startling many residents in the area. Fortunately, the big inferno was a few hundred feet away from the nearest home, and propane tanks on the property did not catch on fire, but neighbors heard loud bangs coming from exploding paint cans. This image shows the flames roaring into the night sky, visible from miles around. The fire started just before 11 p.m. at a residence on East Copper Cliff Road. Nevin Fire Chief Dale Ashby describes what they saw when arriving on scene.
And we responded, 2 pumpers, 2 tankers, 8 firefighters. What we found was a trailer, like an RV, a 5th wheel type trailer. Fully involved, and a sea can beside it that was the contents were on fire, and a lot of flame, a lot of smoke, and there was some damage to other equipment in the area.
No one was injured in the incident. Ashby wants to remind people to call 911 as soon as an emergency in Nevin occurs. Flooding has forced residents of Grassy Narrows out of their community, and the City of Thunder Bay will be playing host to some. It's been 5 days since the First Nation on the banks of the Wabigoon River declared a state of emergency. The city will take in approximately 100 guests from Grassy Narrows, with supports in place to provide care. A full cost recovery plan is in place between the city and the Federal Ministry of Indigenous and Northern Affairs. It's the final stretch of the election campaign in Ontario, with voters set to head to the polls in just 9 days. The party leaders are pushing their platforms ahead of the June 2nd election day. Siobhan Morris tells us what they had to say.
Two of the four major party leaders are spotlighting their plans to make keeping a roof overhead more affordable. The Greens have dubbed their approach, Yes in My Backyard.
We will bring in pre-zoning for mid-rise developments on transit corridors and main streets to get projects moving faster and reduce building costs.
The Liberal plan includes setting up a housing corporation to help fund and build homes.
It will make sure units of housing that are approved actually get built. It'll bring back rent control. It'll make sure that first-time homebuyers can break into or crack into the market the way that they should be able to.
Following a damaging storm on Saturday, Del Duca accused the Progressive Conservative leader of acting like a climate change denier.
Well, I believe in climate change. Let's make that clear. And we're doing everything to prevent it by building electric vehicles, having investment into the battery plants.
Doug Ford was in Brampton talking up construction of new highways and transit expansion.
My mind is on the people who have been devastated by the storms.
Still in isolation, the NDP leader focused on help for families whose loved ones have died in long-term care.
Making sure that the right to sue is reinstated, that we don't just renew these contracts, that we in fact transfer the responsibility for those beds to not-for-profit and publicly run organizations.
The NDP, Liberals, and Greens have all promised to phase out for-profit long-term care.
A pair of local COVID-19 outbreaks have been resolved. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit has announced there are no longer any infections among either patients or staff working on the 2 South Ward at St. Joseph's Hospital. Meanwhile, the outbreak at the Chartwell Glacier Ridge Retirement Home has also been declared over, and the latest COVID-19 case numbers have been released. Ryan Benazzo has the rundown.
There are currently 31 COVID-positive patients at the regional after the number went as high as 35 over the long weekend. The number of COVID-19 patients in intensive care dropped from 2 to 1 on Saturday and remains at that level. The hospital is 105% full, and the ICU occupancy rate sits at just under 82%. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit is reporting 95 new cases since its last update on Friday. There are now 208 active cases, down from 228 on Friday. And the latest incidence and test positivity rates are both down substantially. There were 156 cases per 100,000 people in the district last week, down from over 200 a week earlier. And the positivity rate dropped from 17.7% to 13.8%. Meanwhile, the district's latest vaccine numbers show that more than 2,100 shots were administered last week. Nearly 90% of those were fourth doses. According to the Ministry of Health, 31.8% of people 60 and up now have 4 shots. Ryan Benazzo, TBT News.
There is still no timeline for when the James Whalen tug will be lifted from the Kaministiquia River after the 117-year-old vessel sank on May 1st. City staff continue to talk with local contractors with the skills and equipment to safely raise the historic vessel. Some of the options being considered include using airbags, a crane, or a combination of both. The city is also still in talks with the Lakehead Transportation Museum Society, which has shown interest in the James Whalen in the past. The manager of Parks and Open Spaces, Corey Halverson, says there is still a lot for the city to consider.
There were no immediate options where we could deploy someone and have it dealt with immediately. So we again we're reaching out to as many local contractors in the area that have the type of equipment that barges, things like that may be required to do this.
Halverson went on to say lifting the James Whalen has to be done properly to prevent any damage to the tug. At this point, city crews have not seen any significant water damage to the vessel, but the longer it remains submerged could play an important factor. 150 Indigenous high school students toured the Lakehead University campus today as part of LU's Indigenous Preview Day. This is the first time the event has been held in person since the onset of the pandemic. The day was capped off with a performance by Indigenous educator and TikTok sensation Notorious Cree, aka James Jones. He spoke about his own experience of moving to a city, facing racism at school, and finding his way back to education through culture. LU's Vice Provost of Indigenous Initiatives, Denise Baxter, says making space for Indigenous tradition at the school is key to ensuring students don't have to change who they are to reach a goal of a degree.
This year we have 207 Indigenous students who are graduating with degrees, undergrad, graduate, and PhD level degrees. And really what we want students to see is that this is an option, this is a choice, find their passion and follow it. And we'll work with them to get there, and we'll work with them once they're here.
The students from grades 9 through 12 at several local high schools spent the morning in learning activities with the engineering, chemistry, visual arts programs, and the DNA lab. Baxter hopes spending time on campus will encourage the youth to consider LU when they graduate. An apartment building in the East End has been transformed into a giant piece of artwork. Two budding artists from the town of Marathon traveled to the city this past weekend to create one of the largest and most eye-catching murals in Thunder Bay. Mitchell Ringos has the story.
If you're heading down near the corner of McTavish and McNaughton Streets, you won't have to look very hard for the new mural, as it scales pretty much the entire apartment building. Owner Tracy Vesio says it's a fresh new look for a vintage building in that neighborhood.
The building itself is over 100 years old, and our understanding is that people used to come off the boats. McTavish was one of the first streets in Thunder Bay, and they used to eat in the cafe and then go upstairs and get some rest, and they would look for work at the coal docks.
Vesio says she couldn't have chosen a better pair for the project, which was designed by artists Candice Deschamps and Derek Thompson. Together, they spent 3 days creating the colorful mural, which is comprised of several sections, including the Ukrainian flag, the rainbow flag, a tribute to the area's Indigenous people, and inspiring messages. The couple says they got into creating wall murals because of their kids, designing art pieces with chalk around the town of Marathon, and they were honored to take their artistic talents to the next level here in Thunder Bay.
We had played into, a lot of cartoon characters and big bright things that our kids really enjoyed and other kids in the community really enjoyed. So when we were coming up with this design, when we were speaking with Tracy and Kyle, everybody wanted something that would kind of unify as many people as possible.
And unlike chalk, this wall mural is here to stay. Both Thompson and Deschamps say it's amazing to know locals in the area will be able to see their art every day, and they definitely felt the love while in town as they received very positive reviews in the neighborhood and on social media.
It was very heartwarming for the residents that live on the street. They would come every once in a while and see how it was going. There'd be people driving by, giving us the thumbs up, and that really contributed to the project and how we felt about it.
With both artists starting to really focus on their art at the start of the pandemic, they hope they can do more projects like this one and bring their art around the region. Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.